Hi, good afternoon. Today is December 14th, 2025, and it is exactly 2 p.m. US Central Time. And my name is Rinaldo J. Aguiar Marcano, and I'm recording this video from my home located at the 2302 Britton Ridge Drive, Katy, Texas, 77494. And this home is located about 300 feet away from the home of a gentleman by the name of Robert S. Mueller III, who was the director of the FBI for several years ago. And both our homes are located in a community, a gated community called Lake Point Estates, which is really a subdivision. That means that it has certain independence from it's an unincorporated subdivision. And it is managed by a gentleman by the name Philippe E. Denning, who is the president of the Homeowners Association. But in reality, many of the homes are owned by the Communist Party of China. And I know that sounds like a lot of information, but it's relevant to this conversation, right? All these things are relevant. Today, so this session is a continuation of the previous session, which was the demo 91-9. Part 1. I had to split it in two because it was getting too long. So this is the second part of the demo, D91-9. Okay. And to recap, in the previous session, we were doing a code lab on ranking using BigQuery to rank. We were using a technique called smearing to smear signals from the attorneys that are marked in the GeoIndex that participate in cases with the First Appellate Court of Texas that is managed by Chief Justice Adams, who was appointed by Governor Greg Abbott. So we were using smearing to smear signals from those attorneys to the dockets, the cases, the parties, the court, and do ranking on those entities, right? And ranking the attorneys and the firms, of course, right? So during this process, in the first part of this demo, or this code lab, we came across an attorney by the name Chris Branson, who works in Child Protective Services. And according to the distribution of the markers with crypto payments in this database that was leaked to me in 2024 by the Venezuelan intelligence, he is probably the highest paid of all the attorneys that interact with the First Court of Appeals, right, during 2025. Across that set of attorneys, which I think was 92 attorneys that are marked in that index, in that database, that has crypto payments represented in that database. So, and to be clear, right, so these payments are illegal payments, right? Like these are income that is not reported to the IRS, right? So among all those 92 attorneys, right, that are really a subset that is about 10% of the attorneys that interacted with that court during the year 2025. So out of those 92 attorneys, he is the one that got the most payments in this database of crypto payments, right? And he happens to work in Child Protective Services, right? So when I saw that, I stopped the demo because I realized that, well, first of all, right, the demo was getting too long, but also I stopped it because I realized that discovery, how do I say this, right? I've been doing this thing of using technology and decoding this GeoIndex for a long time. And at this point, I've developed kind of, I don't want to say an intuition, right? Because it's not a matter of intuition, but I've developed an expertise, right? So I can realize when something is a big thing, right? When something is big, right? And when I saw that in the first part of this demo, I realized that that was a discovery that was too big for me to comprehend in that moment. Right? I had to, take this offline because I needed to think about the implications of this. And I also needed to run the legal vaccine, right? Like I needed to run the cluster and apply computing power to this to understand the implications, right? Which is exactly what I did last night. And I have to tell you that the implications, like what I'm seeing in the legal vaccine is is immense, right? Because it changes. I think, this is one of those things where I don't know, right? Like I don't know. I have no basis for comparison on this, right? Like I'm not an attorney, and I'm really a proselytic, right? And I'm applying technology and software techniques that I've learned at Google to this problem, but I lack the how do you say that? I lack the experience, right, on this field to be able to make a call, to make a judgment call, and on on whether this could be what I'm seeing, right? So that's the purpose of making this second part of the demo of the code lab. I want to talk a little bit more than the code itself and the experiments that we did last in the first part. I want to talk more about what I'm seeing in the legal pipeline that this could mean, right? And I kind of made a joke yesterday. I don't know if people are following or will follow in the future what I wrote in that called mobile V6 channel on YouTube, right? But I made a joke yesterday, right? When I turn on the cluster, right, and I see, when I see the output, I made a joke, right? On let me show you. Let me show you. I'm sorry for laughing. Like this is a very serious matter, but I think I put it in this one. I can't recall. No, it was on the other one. On Call Mobile 6. It's Call Mobile dash V6. No? Oh, no, sorry. Call dash mobile V6. So the dash is between call, KOL, and mobile. Yes. So I'm just showing you this because it's kind of a good introduction to what I'm going to talk about. Yes, so I'm gonna read what I wrote, right? I wrote, do you hear that sound and see that spike in the electricity consumption? That's the sound of legal immunity for officers of the courts disappearing. According to what I'm seeing, the immunity only applies to the cases they acted on directly, according to this graph. So the graph I'm seeing in the legal pipeline. It does not apply to cases of Chris Branson, for example. Okay. And I think that captures the essence, right, of what I'm saying, right? So, to recap, right? So we did all this code lab from scratch, and on the first part of this demo, right? And as I said, when I did it, I did not prepare that in advance. I mean, I had not created any tables on BigQuery. I had not debugged any of this, right, beforehand. I had not done the join. I wasn't even sure if the join was going to work. But it did work, right? And when we put the dashboards in Looker, we saw that this gentleman, Chris Branson, came out on top, right? As the most prominent lawyer interacting with this court. And he happened to be in Child Protective Services. So I said, I mean, this is quite a coincidence, right? That myself, right, me personally, I'm being targeted by this network, by the Communist Party of China. In this way, they took my son, right? They secreted my son for 50 days. Then they started this legal campaign to harass me with the courts and call me crazy and have me medicated, like all these things, right? Those are the things that they overtly did, right? But there are other things that they've done where they've, and I've described this in another demo, right? Where there was a period of time, right, where things started escalating on the legal front when I developed the first, I would say meaningful responses with the legal vaccine. They started doing this thing where agents of the network that seemed to me like they were Russian, right? Because of the way they spoke, the color of their skin, their characteristics, they seemed to me they weren't Chinese, right? And they weren't Venezuelan. They seemed to me like they were Russian or Eastern European. And many of them, in multiple occasions, in different venues, in different places, they would always approach me within 1 feet of invading my physical space, really, right? Like they were positioned in the sense very, very close to me, and they were always bringing a child with them, a small child, usually a female child. and they would position the child next to me, right? And then somebody else would come and take a picture of me with the child next to me, right? So when I saw that started happening recurrently, right? Every time I went out, and I don't go out often because of the situation, right? I go out only to see my son when I can see him, right? But of course, when I go see my son, I try to do things with him that are appropriate for a child, right? I try to take him to like an arcade place or to a park, right? But I had to stop going to parks because of this, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say, right, is that I foresaw that what they were trying to do was to create a situation in which they could make a claim like I, had an inappropriate interest in those children, right, that they were putting next to me. There was another incident in which I went, and this was designed, right? I explained the whole sequence, right? I mean, designed that I was testing with the Venezuelan informant, gave information, and we decided to test if they were going to do it. And he told me where to go, and I went to a Starbucks, and they brought a child immediately, and I did it at a Starbucks, so it got recorded by the cameras. Right? So if authorities ever see this, you can go and check those cameras from that Starbucks, which is in, I'll tell you which one. It's this one. So there is a if you go to Google Maps and you look for the Charkies haircuts in Katy, right? Next to that place, there is a Kroger, and inside that Kroger, there is a Starbucks. So I'm talking about more or less here. It's probably the coordinates are probably 29. So the latitude is 29.75796, and the longitude would be minus 95.77828. So around that place, inside of the Kroger, there is a Starbucks and there are cameras, right? And I sat in front of the cameras precisely so this would get recorded. And within a minute, a woman brought a child, put the child was in a cart, like sitting in a shopping cart. She brought the child, put the child in front of my face, and she removed herself from the frame, right? And then what happened was an agent that looked Venezuelan came with the phone and took a picture of me. Took a picture of the child, but I appeared in that photo behind the child, right? So it looks like I'm sitting there watching a child that is unattended, right? If he took a picture and you look at that picture, that's what it would look like, right? Because the woman removed herself from the frame, so this guy took the picture, right? So when I see all that, right, and this happened like in 5 different occasions, right? Different places, different agents with different children. I understand what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to make a claim like that. So I had to stop going to parks with my son. Like the only solution I could find was to stop going to parks because I saw the risk, that they were going to create a false claim. But the claim would be false. It would be a fabrication, but it would be the word of, I don't know, 5 of their agents and a police officer that is part of their network against my word, right? And in this place, which is controlled by the network, of course it's going to go their way, right? And they're going to put me in jail. So the solution is I can go to any park, right? If I go to a place, it has to be a place that has cameras. So everything gets recorded. And I have to have cameras myself to record everything that is on my surroundings, right? Because if they make a claim, I will have the recordings. But anyhow, I'm giving you all this context because when I see that we are doing this debugging session with the data set of the first court of appeals joined with the crypto payments database that Diosdado Cabello uses to bribe people in everywhere, right? Chris Branson, who works in Child Protective Services, comes on top of the distribution. And it's not like he comes up top by a little bit. He comes up top with 2 orders of magnitude. So his score was 38 million points in that scale of that crypto payments scale in that database. And the next, the people that followed him next was 5 million. And after that, everybody was below 500,000. So it was a distribution pretty much like a bell curve, and he was on the top of the curve, right? So this, of course, I cannot help but see the possibilities here, right? So, the implication being that maybe what they're doing is they industrialize this kind of harassment of targeting people with criminal charges, right? Related to children, or serving the parental rights of people that they want to harass, right? So but the thought is that maybe what they did is that they industrialized this, right? They turned it into an industrial operation at planet scale. And that's what I'm saying, that that joke I made yesterday in YouTube, which it's a joke, right? I mean, the way I phrased it, but I mean, this is a very serious matter, right? It's not the matter itself is not a joke. What is a joke is what I wrote, because I know they're reading what I write, right? Because if it's an industrial operation, right, and they're using children, right, they're targeting children for this. I mean, it removes the possibility, because one problem I have, right, for example, Judge Telfair, he has been harassing me with his power in that court, and he served my parental rights, and to the point that I cannot see my son today. After 8 months, I have not been able to spend one night with my son, right? But I can't sue him because he has what they call in that business immunity, right? He has immunity for any decisions that he has made in my case, right? And that is it's a doctrine in at least in this legal system, I imagine, right, to protect, to make it so the judges are not afraid to make decisions, right? Because if the judges were afraid of being sued, then they would be too mild, right, in their decisions. So I understand that, right? That makes sense. But because of that, I can't sue him, right? I mean, civilly. I can't go to federal court. I cannot go to federal court and sue Judge Telfair, right? The case will be dismissed. And it's the same with Chief Justice Adams, right? Although he did all these things and dismissed my 2 petitions for writ of mandamus procedurally, and I can't sue him, right? But when I look at the debug, right, that finding in the pipeline, if this is an enterprise operation, right, if this is an industrialized operation, then this is really a RICO enterprise, right? And that immunity that they have against my claims do not apply. So that's why I said in that joke, that sound, because that I had turned on the cluster, and I know they're monitoring the sound and the electricity consumption of the house, right? Because when I turn on the servers, it produces a lot of noise and produces a lot of heat and consumes a lot of power. It's something like 10 kilowatts hour, I think, more or less. So I know they're monitoring that, right? So I said, you hear that sound, so the sound of the servers, right? That is the legal vaccine figuring out that the immunity is disappearing, right? The civil immunity that they have. Again, because the immunity is against my cases, right? That they have touched, but it's not against the industrialized operation that they have going on with Chris Branson and other Chris Bransons, right? In other cities and other countries. Like, this is a planetary operation. They have no protection against that, right? And this includes all the officers of this course, right? So it seems, well, so what I want to talk about more is about the potential paths that the pipeline identify, because this changes the game, right? Okay, but I think before we talk about that, I should, to make this, flow logically, I should show you a few things, right? So because just the presence of Chris Branson in that docket and having the crypto payments does not prove that this is an industrialized operation, right? I mean, it's not. It's a hint, but it's not a proof, right? It's not a smoking gun, right? But then I started digging, right? Obviously, and I found a few things, right, that seem suspicious, right? So and when I say suspicious, I'm being overly conservative, right? Somebody else could probably say that this is a smoking gun, but I'm going to say suspicious, right? Because really my objective is to make a plea to authorities to investigate this Chris Branson, right? And the cases that he has worked on, and specifically this case, because there is a person that seems to me like it's incarcerated right now because of these actions, right? I mean, I see the case and it seems very similar to what they were trying to do. And remember, I wrote about what they were trying to do at the Starbucks, at the parks months ago, right? I could have not foreseen this, right? And this is important to me to say, for me to say, because let me make a parenthesis here. The Venezuelan informant already told me that, I mean, he tells me things, right? And one of the things that he told me is that what they're going to say is that the things I'm saying are a fabrication, right? But what I'm saying is a fabrication of the empire, right? It's the American empire trying to, depose Diosdado Cabello, right? Something like that, or Maduro, or whatever, right? So they're going to try to give it a political spin, right? But but this destroys that argument. Why? Well, because I wrote about this and I recorded this in a demo timestamp, right? In every single of my demos, I say at the beginning the day and the time. And you can go and check when I say those things that they were trying to do with those children at the park, at the arcade place, and at the Starbucks. You will see that I said this months ago. I could have not foreseen that this Chris Branson was going to come into my site, right, with the technology I've developed. And this person was incarcerated over a year ago. This person has been in jail for over a year, right? This person that I'm going to talk about has been in jail since before the Venezuelan intelligence leaked the database to me. So I could have not possibly foreseen this, right? And not even the authorities of this country could have been, because you could make like, well, maybe it's the FBI trying to trick Diosdado Cabello, right? But they could have not foreseen any of this, right? Because this person was incarcerated a year and a half ago. So, I want to talk about that person. But before I talk about that person, right, I want to say, I want to be very careful about this, because this really is a job for the authorities, right? Like, they need to investigate. I don't have the tools or the access to and I don't want to say anything that could be then used by, say, the lawyer of this person to free him, right? To make a claim that could free him, because I don't know if that person is guilty or not. I cannot make that call. I have no idea. But what I can tell you is that what I'm seeing looks suspicious, right? So my position on this is, I'm just reporting to you what I'm seeing, right? And I'm going to report that, to me, it looks suspicious, right? Based on the database of that the Venezuelan intelligence gave me. But I cannot, in good conscience, make an inference, right, about whether this is what happened or whether that person is guilty or not. Like, I can't, right? Honestly, I can't do that. But I see the thing and it looks suspicious to me, and I feel like I have a responsibility to say it, because if that person is incarcerated and didn't really do anything, like, somebody should at least look at that, right? Because it's the freedom of a human being, right? I don't know. So anyhow, I look at the docket, right? Let me show you. And I have these things already pre-saved here, so I'm gonna show you the PDF files that I saved. Yes. Okay, so the first one is this, right? So this is the printer-friendly version of the docket in the appellate court, right? So this is the case number. I'm gonna read it to you. It's 01250958. That's the case, -CB. That's the case in the appellate court, on the first appellate court, right? And it simply says, termination of parental rights or conservatorship accelerated. And then it says, in the interest of ET, all children. Now, we have to be cautious here with the captions, because, well, we know that the clerk of the first appellate court changes these dockets like it's nothing, right? So, they could have changed the name or the initials or, whatever. But interestingly, in the data set that I had ingested, the child, the caption was different, right? If you see the first part of this demo, you will see that in the caption it says JR, right? To the point that it got picked up with a junior marker, right? But here, the caption is different. right? They changed the caption. So from the moment I ingested the data to the moment I printed this page, the caption was changed because it doesn't match what the data set says. And I ingested the data set, I think was 3 days ago. But anyhow, right? There's a series of anomalies, right? That look abnormal. This looks odd, like in many different ways. So I'm just gonna say what I'm seeing, right? I have to say, I ran this through the pipeline, and the pipeline told me that this termination. So I had to look it up in Google because there were many subgraphs, and I couldn't really figure out which one was it. But this kind of termination, accelerated termination of parental rights, it could be multiple different things, right? So here in Texas, apparently, it seems like it could be either because an adoption, right? So if somebody's giving a child for adoption, they have to terminate the parental rights of the person. The parental rights have to be terminated. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is that the person whose parental rights are being terminated committed a crime, a particular type of crime, and there's a list, right? And those crimes include neglecting the child, putting the child in danger, and sexually related crimes against that child or against another child. So, for example, if the parent whose parental rights are being terminated committed or was convicted of a crime involving sexual violence towards a child or sexual exploitation or sexual behavior, right? Then the parental right can be terminated. So it could be any of those things, right? But one thing to note here is that it says that this is in the 313th court. Now, I went to of Harris County, right? It says here Harris County. Now, if you go, and let me see if I can do that, right? So I'm going to go to the clerk's website, right? And I'm going to log in. And I'm going to do a search. But let me see. Okay. So what I want to show you, and I don't know if you will be able to see that here. No, you can't see it. But because when I click on this, maybe let me see if I can do this here this way. I want to share my entire screen to see if you can see it. Let me see. Yes. Okay. So I don't know if you can see this, right? Let me increase the font. But if you look at this page, right, this is the Harris County District Clerk, right? So this is the official website of the clerk that handles all these courts in Harris County. If you look at this, so this is the search page where you can do searches. And if you click on courts, you will see that the 313 is not in this list. So there's the 310, 311, 312, but the 313 is not there, right? So what I'm saying is the court that this docket from, and to do this properly, let me do this as well. I'm going to go to Texas courts. Right? I'm going to click on the First Court of Appeals, case search, and I'm going to do that search here, right? So you see that, and I'm not, I'm and you see that it says termination of parental rights, and all the things that I said before, and it says here that it's on the 313, the 313th court, district court of Harris, right? Of Harris County. And that the court reporter is Stephanie Wells. And if I do a Google search for the 313 court, I get this page, and it says that the court reporter is Stephanie Wells, right? So this court does exist. It's not a mistake. The court exists, and the court reporter is exactly Stephanie Wells, right? So that matches. But the court itself is not searchable on the clerk's website for some reason. It's not in the options, right? It's like this court is not. You cannot search the dockets of this court. So this is strange, right? That's one anomaly. Now I'm going to go back to the previous way of sharing my screen. Okay. So that is that is strange, right? The second thing that is strange is the case number. So if you look up this case number, and I did look it up, right, and I saved it, all these PDFs are saved in this bucket that I'm creating real time as I do this investigation. Not only this one, but like all the things that I'm investigating, I'm creating this bucket where I'm keeping the things organized, right, so I can use them in court. So I created this bucket under court evidence, federal court, Southern District of Texas, and I put it in here because all this was triggered by Judge Hittner denying my motions to serve the summons, right? For the clerk to issue the summonses that I need to serve the other parties. So because I'm being blocked in the federal court, I'm adding all this to my folder for the federal court. So what I want to show you, right, is that if you look that case in the office of Harris County, this appears to be a motor vehicle accident. I mean, this docket with this number appears as if it was a motor vehicle accident, right? But in the First Appellate Court, it says that the parental rights of somebody are being terminated. So this is a tremendous mismatch, right? It's odd. And also remember, the court itself is not searchable. Nobody can search any documents from that court using the official website. So it's two things that are strange, okay? Now, another thing that is strange is that if you do a Google search, and probably you won't be able to do it because when I say this thing, the network immediately removes them from Google, right? They react to the things that I say here real time before I post it on YouTube because they have the internet intercepted at the 2218 Britton Ridge Drive. The realtor that lives next door. So anyhow, this folder is inside of the federal court, Southern District of Texas, and inside of that, there is a folder for Chris Branson. And all these documents are inside because he's the one handling this case, serving the parental rights of a person, right? That we don't know because the caption is abbreviated and has been changed, has been manipulated. But somebody's right has been served, right? Parental rights, which is, remember, the same thing that they're doing to me, and they have been doing to me for 8 months, right? So all these similarities hint to me that what they're doing to me is not a one-off, right? It's not like they sat on a dark room to conspire on how to deal with me. No, all this is industrialized, and they do this to multiple people around the planet, right? I'm talking about the Chinese, the Communist Party of China. Like they are the ones that industrialize this. But anyhow, if I did a Google search yesterday and I came across this document. I think it's this one. So this is a docket list for a judge called Charles Griffin of Harris County, the Gulf Coast Children's Court. Okay, and this docket, this hasn't happened yet. It's going to take place on the 19th of December. I'm mentioning this in case any reporters, any investigators, anybody watches this video. You can go to that court. I mean, this should be a public proceeding, I imagine, right? But I don't know because it's a juvenile case. So maybe for privacy reasons, maybe it's not public. I don't know. But anyhow, this is on the docket. But I mean, the information is public, right? Because I found this on Google, and I saved this PDF in the Google storage bucket. So you see, this will take place on December 19, 2025. So exactly 5 days from now. And you see the line item number 5, right, says that there's going to be a hearing or something related to a permanency review after a final order. And the case number matches the case number that is on the First Court of Appeal, right? So, I mean, this does match in the sense, it matches in 2 dimensions, right? It matches on the case number and it matches on the type of case because it says permanency review, right? So permanency is when you place a child in a different place other than their home. And it also matches in the fact that this is a children's court, right? So it matches on 3 dimensions, what the first court of appeal says, not the motor vehicle accident, right? Docket that appears in the Harris County clerk's website. So this is probably the real case, right? So it seems this is consistent with the thought that maybe they're serving the parental rights of somebody. Right? That's what the docket says on the first court of appeals. But if this is the case, it says ITIO nanes, right? So this means in the interest of nanes, right? So in the interest of the child nanes. And it has a note that says 14 plus. So maybe this is a juvenile that is more over 14 years old, right? With the last name nanes, right? Those are the things that I can infer from this, right? Maybe I'm reading this wrong. It's possible, right? But it seems to me like it could be Nanes, right? Now, if the child is named Nanes, it's possible that the father is named Nanes, right, as well. So remember, I had saw in the pipeline, and then I verified online in Google that the reasons for serving somebody's parental rights are basically neglect, endangerment, or sexual charges, like how do you call that? Like sex offenders, right? If you're a sex offender, your parental rights are served, could be served, right? I guess it depends on the gravity of the offense, right? So, I mean, the data points that I have at this point is that this is somebody with the possibly, right, with the last name Nanes, and somebody that possibly committed or was charged with a criminal offense related to like a sex offender, right? Somebody who was labeled as a sex offender, I guess is the most accurate way to put it, because I don't know whether the person committed the crime or not, right? But he was labeled for sure as a sex offender, right? So this is the hypothesis, right? That I'm working a hypothesis. So with this, what I did was to search for cases that could match this criteria, right? Somebody named Nanes that was potentially charged with a sexual or a sex crime in Harris County, right? And I found one person. And this person is in jail today and has been incarcerated for over a year. And this person is, and this is, what I said at the beginning, right? I don't know, like I have no way to make a call on this. I don't want to say, but all these series of anomalies, right, in the docket, in the changing of the caption of the case, in this guy Branson being marked in this index with the highest number in crypto payments, I think it cries for an investigation, right, from authorities, because remember, there is a human being that is in jail that may or may not be guilty. I don't know, right? But somebody needs to review this, right? Because I guess what I'm trying to say is that the administration of justice should be something that is impeccable, right? You should be able to look at this docket and not find one thing that looks odd, because if one thing looks odd, anybody can question it and can say, maybe this person is innocent, right? But this docket is plagued with anomalies, things that have been changed, things that don't match. The court is not searchable. I mean, the court is supposed to be a repository of public records, because the accountability depends on visibility, right? If this is a court that is a mysterious court that nobody can see what they do, how can that be accountable, right? Anyhow, so in this docket, I also saved information related to that person, right? That whose last name matches the name of this hearing that is going to happen with Judge Griffin on the 19th of December, and that was charged with an offense that it's a sex crime related to a minor, which would explain the serving of the parental rights, right? And I think, let me see if I can find it. I think it's this one. I saved the 2 rows, yes. So this is the person, right? Paul Nanes is the name. And this person got divorced on the year 2016. Okay, so these are not the criminal charges. These are the civil records related to the divorce. But right before the divorce, he was charged with a sex crime related to a minor. And you can see that. I also saved that document. So we're talking about that this happened 10 years ago, right? I mean, that this person was charged with this crime. So let me show you this one. I think this is the report that says that he's in jail right now. So you can see that his name is in here. He was born in 87, right? So he's about 38 years old. And he was booked into jail on September 24th, 2024. And he is incarcerated on the JA09/2H202A, right? That's the cell where he is. And you can see here that he is a sex offender, right? He's labeled as a sex offender. I'm not saying that he is, I don't know if he is, right? But he's labeled in that way by Harris County. And the charge was indecency with child sexual contact, right? Which is exactly what they were trying to do by bringing these children next to me, right? And taking pictures and fabricating evidence for something like this, right? So you can see that this could be an industrialized procedure that they apply, right? When they want to get rid of somebody, they do this thing with the children and then they put them in jail. I'm not saying that every sex offender is innocent, right? But there's going to be, or there must be a subset of people that have been targeted in this way to weaponize the children that are not even their children, right? I mean, these FSB agents bringing these children next to me in the parks and trying to create an incident, fabricate an incident, really. Those children are their children, right? Or maybe they rent the children. I don't know where they got the children from, but I have never seen these children before in my life, right? So, but you see, like and remember, Branson, the highest paid, crypto paid attorney in this that interacted with the First Court of Appeals in 2025, is the one driving this serving of the parental rights, right? Posing as he's representing the child or the juvenile in this case. So, but it gets more interesting than that, right? Because then, and again, right, it might be that this is not the case, right? It might be that this is just a series of coincidences that look like this could be the case. I don't have any way to see because I don't work in law enforcement. I don't have access to the records, right? And they are obscuring the records and changing them and doing all these tricks, right? So I don't find them. So that's why an investigation from an authority, right? The FBI, I don't know who, but it is needed in this, right? And remember, there is a person that is in jail, right? That may or may not be guilty. I don't know. But I have to tell you, I feel compelled to send him a copy of the book to jail, right? I don't know. I'm talking about the book that has these demos, right? Yes. So the other thing, right? So remember, I showed you the divorce, but I haven't shown you the criminal charges. So the criminal charges are also strange. I mean, I ran this through the pipeline quickly, right? I didn't use the cluster, I used the local computers. So I don't know, the analysis is not very depth, but there's a few things that look odd. So he got arrested. So I'll give you the short story, right? Because I don't want to make this demo too long. But the short story, from what I can see, is that he got arrested on 2024 because he failed to report. So sex offenders, at least in this jurisdiction, they have to report to an authority every year or something like that, after the birthday, I think is on the month of their birthday. They have to report and say, I'm living here, I'm working here, and so there's a registry to keep them all in check, right? And he failed to report. And when he failed to report, there is an officer by the name of Cynthia Pearl. Purl. And this officer was very diligent, and she proactively looked him up in a database and noticed that he had failed to report. And then she went and picked him up, or caused him to be picked up by the police, right? And he was picked up. But he wasn't picked up because he had inappropriate contact with the minor in 2024. He was picked up because he apparently failed to report himself to the appointment, right? And here I have to tell you, right? I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I have no access to see what, but I can see how it could have been a fabrication, right? Like they could have created a situation that made it impossible for him to report, or harass him with something else that would distract him and forget about his duty to report. And then the day after he didn't report, trigger, right? You are arrested because you didn't report, right? So they have ways of pulling something like this off, right? And I've seen these in my experience, fencing them off, right? I have to be always on the look on how they're going to harm me using the institutions of the state, right? So it's possible, right? It's possible that the reason for that arrest was a fabrication, right? Or was something that was induced by the network, right? It's possible. Now, the underlying reason why he had to report was really a case from 10 years ago, from 2024 or 2025, 2014 or 2015, I can't recall, in which allegedly he had inappropriate contact with the child, indecency, right? And this is what I think they were trying to do, fabricate, right, with me, or targeting me recently in the last few months, right? I don't have access to that docket. I haven't seen it, right? I imagine if I put my mind to it, I will be able to find it. But I found the charging instrument of 2024, right, when he was detained last year. And I think it's one of these two. Let me see if this is this one. Yes. So this document kind of gives a brief explanation of what happened, and it says here that this officer, right, Cynthia Pearl, who is a credible and reliable a credible and reliable person who is a certified peace officer employed by the Houston Police Department and assigned to the Special Victims Division / Sex Offender Compliance Unit, has reasons to believe and does believe that Paul Nanes Jr., born May 19, 1987, and you see that they match with the person that is incarcerated, with Harris County System Persons Number 02154424, the defendant, committed the offense of failure to comply with the sex offender registration requirements on June 19, 2024 in Harris County, Texas. Right? So he's really been arrested for not complying with the registration, not because of the contact itself, right? The alleged contact. But then, yes. And he's, this is concerning. Like the apartment where he's living, right, has the 00 by grand marker, right, in the street number. So I mean, the apartment complex is a controlled area by the network. So that hints that it could have been a setup, right? Paul Nanes Jr., right? So this is the charging instrument for 2024. I also have in that pocket a document that explains. Let me see if I can find it. What is the other one? I think it's this one. This is a charging instrument. Oh no, this is something else. The other charging instrument is this one. Okay, so the alleged offense was actually in 2008. Imagine that. So we're talking about something that happened 16 years ago when he was 22. Right? And this was on the 208th District Court of Harris County. And he was convicted of the felony offense of burglary of a habitation. So I don't know, right? But the underlying charge is not this one. The underlying charge is, I mean, for the sex offender thing, is something that happened in 20. I saw the document, but I don't have it here. It's something that happened in 2014, where he was accused of indecent contact with a minor. It wasn't rape. It was indecent contact. So this is, I mean, I don't know, right? I don't know what happened there, but I read the statutes, and this could be that you were passing on the street and somebody said you touched their child. Right? That's enough to trigger that. Even if you didn't touch them, right? If the person says that you touched them, and there's a corroborating witness that said you did touch the child, boom, you're a sex offender, and all this happens to you, right? So it's a dangerous weapon. But again, right? I am nobody to judge whether that's what happened or not, right? I think this needs to be investigated. Now, one thing I have to tell you is that when I run this through the pipeline using just a small number of cores, I did not run this on the entire cluster, but it flagged another document that in which the same officer also took a proactive action that got somebody arrested and put in jail, and I think it was a capital offense, right? And the reason why I got flagged is because this officer is obviously very proactive, right? This is an officer that goes out of her way to find people that can be put in jail. Which, I mean, maybe she's a maybe she's a very good detective, or maybe she is being motivated, right? I don't know. But putting that, right? Putting those, and the other, I mean, I'll tell you about the other one, right? In case anybody wants to look at that, right? So the other one is this one, which also ended up in one of these courts of appeals, right? But this was on the 14th. And this case was about a person called Sajan Antonio Johnson. And the trial court cause was 1217869. And if you look for Paul, right? Yeah, I'm just going to read you this part. It says, Officer Cynthia Paul, who worked with the West Side Divisional Gang Unit, ran the alias Grim through the gang database and came up with a person named Sajan Johnson, who lived in the same area where the homicides had occurred. So, the officer proactively went and looked for an alias, and that alias came up in a database, and that's how this person got arrested, right? Officer Paul testified that appellant was not listed in the gang database when she initially ran the search in 2008, but had been added well before the start of this trial. Officer Paul testified that appellant is documented as a Black Disciple, or BD, gang member. Officer Paul further testified that the Black Disciples fall under the umbrella of the Folk Nation. So I don't know. I don't know, right? So I saved all that in that bucket, in that folder, in case it's useful to anybody. Let me see, what is this? Yeah, so this is the case that has the same number, but it's actually a motor vehicle case, right? That hasn't even been tried in the court. And what else do I have here? Oh, and this is a photo of Judge Grimm. So this is the judge that is going to have the audience with, regarding that juvenile with the last name Nanes, who seems to be being placed in a home or a facility that is not his regular home. So that this is that judge receiving receiving something. I think it was a gift or from the governor, right, of that time. So this was in I don't know, 1963. I don't know. It seems odd, right? Because it's too long ago. Maybe it's not the same judge. I don't know. Yeah, because I mean it would be 60 years ago. Yeah, maybe it's not the same judge. But it has the same name, right? Charles Griffin. And what is that docket? Charles Griffin, right? So I mean, it could be that it's not the same judge, right? But anyhow, yeah. So a lot of things, right? But the thought is that going back to the conversation about what we found, right, in this in the first part of this demo, that Chris Branson is interacting with the court and serving the parental rights of somebody that may or may not be Paul Nanes, right? But they're serving the parental rights of somebody in a way that is consistent with what they have been doing to me, and also the things that would justify the serving of parental rights in that manner, accelerated manner, suggest that it's something that could be criminal, related to a criminal offense, right? Could be endangerment of the child, or could be a sex offender, a sex offense related issue, right? Which would be consistent with the TTPs that I've seen them try to apply to me, right? They did not succeed, but they tried, and they really, really hard tried. So because of that, I'm going to give you another data point. I have to look this up in my phone. Excuse me, give you just 1 second, but I'll give you a date, okay? And when I give you this date, let me find the date. What is this? I think this was around November 15, but let me check. Just 1 second. Yeah, sorry, I should have checked this beforehand. It was probably around November. Yeah, I'll check the date later because I don't want to to consume too much time here. But it was probably around November 15, I think, right? So there was an incident in which I went to Target. So this Target, I'm going to give you the address, right? So this is the Target that is located on Westheimer here in Katy. Yes, so the address is 23710 Westheimer Parkway, Katy, Texas 77494. I think this was around November 15, if I recall correctly. That around that time. May have been before, but if you come across this video and you're an investigator, I imagine you would have access to all the recordings of the Target, right? And you would have access to the logs of my Tesla. I was driving the red Tesla that day, and my former partner was driving the black Tesla. So both of our cars should be recorded with the GPS location at this Target in one of these days, right? And this was around 6 p.m. It was in the afternoon. So what happened was we are at Target, right, shopping for a few things for the child. Um, and as we're leaving, right, when we're walking towards the cashier, and this thing I haven't said it before because it's it didn't amount to anything, but in this context it could be relevant, right? It's not a smoking gun, but it could show a pattern, right, of targeting and how they target people. So that's why I'm going to say it. So as we are approaching the register, the cash register, right, to pay, my former partner directs me in one direction. He tells me, "Oh, let's go this way," right? And I said, "No, let's go in the other direction," right? And remember, I'm in a situation in which I have to be hyper aware of my surroundings because they could be trying to harm me in different ways, right? Because of all this information and know-how that I have on how to, that will expose them, right? And that could expose them. So they're actively every single day that I go out of the house, they're trying to harm me in different ways, right? Sometimes it's physical harm, sometimes it's legal harm, right? Like the one I'm going to describe. So she tries to direct me in one direction, right, to one of the cashiers. But when I look on that direction, I see a group of 3 children. They look to, I glance at them, right? They look to me like they could have been maybe, I don't know, 12 years old, something like that. I, I don't know. I don't know exactly what age they were, right? But they were obviously children, right? And they were positioned in the middle of the in the path in between us and the cashier. So I would have to pass next to them. And because and this was on the weeks after they had been bringing the children next to me in the parks, right? And at the main event place and at the other place that I described before, right? So this already happened multiple times where they were trying to position children next to me and then somebody would come and take a picture, right? Or the Starbucks incident I described. So when I see, and these 3 children were female, right? There were 3 female children. When I see the 3 female children, I said, no, let's go in the other direction, right? So I take the card, and I didn't even argue with her. Like I made the decision, I took the card, I went on the opposite direction to not cross paths with the children because I know what they're trying to do, right? And we pay for the items. And then as I come out on the other side of the store, and I'm walking with my former partner and my child, right? And I'm holding the shopping cart with the things that we just purchased. And as I'm doing that, the 3 children came out of the store and were walking towards me to intercept me, right? Again, the same 3 children. They came out of the store at the exact same moment and they were coming my way, right? So what I had to do, I had to take evasive action, right? I turned left, and you should be able to see this in the cameras in the parking lot. I immediately turned left and went, as far as I could, because I know they are trying to make a claim like that thing that I'm seeing with these Paul nannies, right? I think the charge is indecent contact with a minor is the legal charge, right? So I don't know. As I said, it's not a smoking gun, but I've seen this in action, right? So I don't know. If you're an investigator, check out those tapes, and I would suggest finding out who are the parents of those children, right? Because the ones that were going to make the claims are probably the parents, right? Who probably are agents of the network. Like I don't think the children would make the claims, like it would be the parents. But I don't know. So it could be, right? It could be an industrialized operation to target people with this in this way. But again, to bring it back to the original conversation, if this is the case, right, what these attorneys and actors in these courts are doing is really helping this enterprise, right? Helping this industrialized targeting of civilians, weaponizing the law and the court system to fabricate charges, right? And this is illegal, and it's a RICO enterprise because they're getting paid in crypto. So this destroys the immunity that they may have regarding my case. But this is where it gets interesting, right? Because then the pipeline shows me, I have to say, right, at this point, I want to use this opportunity to ask a question to the Venezuelan informant who I know is going to watch this video. Because I need input here. Like I see the output of the legal pipeline, and it's very exciting. Like the possibilities are endless. I could take this in many different directions. And I see the graphs of the liability distribution system that I built, and it's immense, right? I could take this in anywhere, right? But I don't know. Like, I guess what I'm trying to ask for is for if you can ask the lawyer that you asked the last time for input. Like, what does that person think that could be the most effective way to approach this, right? So I'm going to describe the situation that I'm seeing in the pipeline. So obviously, Judge Hittner denied the motion for compelling the clerk to issue the summons, right? So they're blocking my access to that federal court. And the two cases are stalled. On the other case against Elon Musk, they canceled without any reason the initial conference that was rescheduled for these upcoming weeks. It was supposed to take place on the 18th, I think, on Thursday. The clerk canceled it, but did not address my motion to my motion for the extension of time to serve and to reissue the summons, right? So it's the same situation. Both cases are stuck by not issuing the summons and not addressing the motions, right? The motions, the important motions. And if you look at the distribution of the progress of the cases in this federal court, my cases fall below the 15th percentile, meaning my two cases are stalled to a point where, if you look at the distribution of progression, basically no other case is stuck in this way, only my two cases, right? So it seems obvious that I'm being blocked, right? I think that's a safe assumption to make. So because of that, there's different things I could do, right? And this is according to the legal pipeline, and I have no way to know, I don't have the intuition, the legal instinct to tell what is the most effective way to do this, right? The pipeline thinks basically move the ball, right? Take these out of Texas, sue them in federal court in California, right? That's one path. Another path is sue them in federal court in Washington, D.C. Another path could be file for a petition for a writ of mandamus with another federal court that is higher than this court, like a federal court of appeals, right? And do the same that I did in the state courts, meaning appeal these, ask for appellate review and for a writ of mandamus. It will probably get blocked as well, and then go to the federal court, the U.S. federal court, like the federal Supreme Court, right? So it would be a path of escalation similar to the state path of escalation I took, but on the federal area, right? And that would, in two steps, take me to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, right? Just with one more procedural denial like the ones they do, I would be there, right? And once I'm there, I then can introduce evidence to target that other person, that other, the big game, right? I would be able to target the big game with only one more procedural denial of due process. So that is appealing to me. But I also have to optimize for solving this quickly, right? Because I can't be, in the situation I am where they're targeting me with all these things, I'm exposed, right? I need to solve this quickly. So I don't know. If you could please ask the human lawyer what would be the best way to escalate this so this implodes quickly, right? My goal is to solve this quickly. I'm not optimizing for impact. I'm optimizing for a speed of resolution. Because I'm sure the impact will come later, right? Like, if I manage to get the situation unstuck from these Texas courts where they have me trapped, I know that the escalation will be quickly, right? Either way, will be fast, right? So the path for suing, so the question becomes venue selection, right? So the path for suing them, I'm just going to give you more details so you can pass this to the attorney, right? The path for suing them in California is because they hired me, in this deceptive way, and to spy on me, and they made an offer to me from Twitter headquartered in California with the request of me moving to California, right? So although that never materialized, the order and the company, I could make the argument that the venue selection is appropriate for California. Right? And this is just me reading the situation. I think that would be probably consistent. How do I say this? You remember when Elon Musk moved out of California and came to Texas? Well, that is because the legal environment in California wasn't a safe haven to him, right? That's why he moved to Texas, because this is safe haven for obvious reasons, right? So it sounds to me like taking it back to California would be the appropriate response, right? Because that's what he cannot handle, right? Or at least as easily as he could here in Texas. But the Washington is also appealing because the big game is there, right? And escalating it in the federal system locally via the appellate review and the writ of mandamus to ask Judge Hittner to do his job is appealing because he could let me see, right? If there's more actors like this at a higher level, and the higher I go, the higher liability they create for themselves, right? Like you saw what happened with the Deepwater case, right? I would have not been able to see the Deepwater company, right? What is it called? Offshore drilling Deepwater, right? The one that was fined by the APA that is litigating cases on this Court of Appeals managed by CJ Chief Justice Adam. I would have not had the opportunity to see that case if they had not blocked me in this way in this court, right? So maybe they will make the same mistake in the court that has appellate review powers over the Southern District of Texas. Because, that's the thing. In all these systems, there's always somebody above you, right? Nobody operates in a vacuum, right? Even Judge Hittner, who is a senior judge, somebody has review powers over his decisions, right? Or his inactions. So, I could take it that way too, right? But obviously, either way I look at it, this is a tremendous advancement for me, for my campaign, because now I can move forward and I can move forward. I can choose how to move forward, right? I can take the ball to a place that it's convenient to me, not to them, right? So it completely changes the legal game. And in a way, the political game as well, right? Now, this topic, and this is also, I don't know, like if you got this, the pipeline is unable to find the answer for this question. So I'm going to also ask you if you could also ask this second question to the attorney. It's the following, right? It's about the triage of the court cases. Because if you think about it, right, of course, when this happened, I did not understand the level of the judge that I was interacting with. I mean, I'm talking about Judge Hittner, right, with 2 T's. As we saw in the previous demo, this is a judge that was appointed to that same federal court by Ronald Reagan when he was the sitting president, I think. We're talking about 1986, right? To put this in context, the wall in Berlin had not fallen, right? And he was already appointed. So this was in the middle of the Cold War, right? And he was appointed by the president that dealt with the Russians during the Cold War to that federal court. So this is a very senior judge, right? And he was appointed to Harris County Court by the governor before I was born. Right? So this is probably one of the most senior judges of the Southern District of Texas. Now, the question is the following, and this is what I don't have the answer. The pipeline doesn't have the answer. What is the triage system for the cases in this federal court? Is it a random round robin? Like these judges could get any case? Because that sounds to me like it would be a very inefficient system. Like if you think of a court, imagine a hospital, right? So let's not think about a court. Let's think about a hospital, right? If you have a hospital and you're receiving patients on the ER, you will have a hierarchy of doctors. Like you will have doctors that are more experienced than others, or that have a special set of skills, right? If you get a gunshot, there's a doctor that can do that. If you get, a fracture for a car, bone fracture from a car accident, you have a doctor that specializes in that, right? Like, and you will have a hierarchy of and different specialties, right? What seems odd to me, and this is just me thinking, right? But when I see the level of this judge, right? This sounds to me like this is a mega judge, right? This is a heavy artillery, right? And remember, I am a proselyticant with no lawyer, right? Trying to pursue a case that, I mean, these people are making claims that I'm crazy in Harris County courts, right? In Fort Bend County courts. I mean, by any measure or metric that you look at it, my case is a very low level, you know, uh, you could discount it as I'm crazy, even, right? So why, how this assignment happened? That the most senior judge of this federal court got assigned to this very low level, supposedly, right? So their narrative is that I'm crazy, that what I'm saying has no merits. But it seems to me like the triage system of this court then is broken, because if the most senior judge, somebody who has been a judge since the Cold War, can get assigned to a case of a person that might be crazy, this means that the triage process is broken, right? Or that the triage process does work and there is intelligence behind that assignment, right? But either way, I need to understand what is the logic here. Can that judge be assigned? Well, I guess that this could also be determined statistically, right? We could look at all the cases that Judge Hippner has been assigned to and has decided on the last 5 years, and see if there are any cases of a proselyticant, for example. Right? That could be a signal. It's amazing, right? How statistics really are the answer to pretty much everything, right? Because everything you do leaves a trace, a statistical. Like if you do something by design, like if you take an action in the world that is designed, that has intelligence and a goal behind it, that leaves a statistical trace. It is not a random event anymore, right? And if it's not random, it has a trace. It has a footprint, right? It leaves a fingerprint. So I don't know. I'll explore that avenue. But if you could ask the attorney, your attorney, if how is that this triage system really works, right? Because it could, if I know how it works, then I could know how to analyze the thing, right? So that's the question about the assignment of Judge Hittner to that case. Okay, so these are the anomalies of that case that we talked about, right? Sorry. So we already talked about this. Okay, we talked about the subgraphs that I'm seeing on how to take this to another place. Okay, so I have other observations, but I think I'm going to separate this into another because to keep things separated. This seems to me like it's more of a legal conversation, right? Or legal topics. So I don't want to mix it with the on the ground intelligence observations. So I'm gonna split it again, and I'm sorry for keep delaying these specific topics. But I think it makes more logical sense, so I can keep things isolated, and it helps me because when I ingest the transcripts into the pipeline, if I mix the topics, it introduces noise. So it's better to keep things. I mean, for my own internal systems, it's better for me to keep it separated. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna cut this demo here, and I'm gonna record another demo. I'm gonna try to do it today with the more technical observations. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna thank you for your time. And again, the Venezuelan informant, if you can please help me, because I really need to get this moving quickly. So if you can help me with that, it would really help me. There's another. Let me see if there's one thing here that I could tell you. Yes, I think I'll leave this for or later, right? Because there are some are on the ground observations and some are more philosophical things, and I don't want to mix them. Yes, so I'll cut this demo here. I'll thank you again for your time, and I'll see you on the next session. Okay.